When this matter is resolved, let's remarry, okay? I was sitting on the stone bench in the Vlila courtyard lost and thought when Ethan brought Leland front of me just 3 hours ago. Lila had been caught on camera by paparazzi suspected of being Ethan's mistress. The entire internet was digging into her past, accusing her of being the homewrecker who had destroyed mine. Ethan's sweet love story, third party and intruder. Ethan's public image as a devoted husband trembled overnight, and the foundation of his company began to tremble in my past life when Ethan came to me with divorce papers. I was so furious that I uprooted every rose he had planted for me in the courtyard. I had screamed, hysterically demanding answers about his relationship with Lila. She was clearly just his benefactor's daughter. There were countless ways he could have handled the situation, but he chose to sacrifice me just to prevent Lila's depression from worsening. What Ethan didn't know was that, during the period when the scandal was boiling online, I was also diagnosed with moderate depression. Autumn. Ethan called my name again, snapping me out of my daze. I lowered my gaze and fixed my eyes on the divorce papers lying on the stone table. Ethan knelt on one knee at my feet, his deep eyes looking up at me, his warm hands clasped mine, his voice tinged with a coaxing tone. Autumn, do this for me, okay? We'll tell the public that our marriage has long been in name, only that we decided to divorce a year ago, but just hadn't found the right time to announce it. I didn't respond immediately. Behind him, Liz stood in a white dress, straight in Ethan's jacket. Her lips were pale, and her eyes were rhymed red. Sister, her Autumn, please help me, okay? She pleaded. My mother took her own life because of online bully. I don't want to follow in her footsteps. Please, I'll even get on my knees and beg you. She was about to kneel when Knees and swiftly stood up, supporting her and pulling her protectively into his arms. His expression darkened as he scolded her in a low voice. What are you doing? Lila flinched, her voice fragile and tearful as she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. I just wanted Sister Autumn to feel better. Eaton's patties visibly waned, turning to me. The gentleness in his demeanor disappeared entirely. Autumn, I'm not here to negotiate. I've already made up my mind. Few refuse to sign. Don't blame me for what happens next. I met his gaze calmly. He fell silent, but I knew what he was about to say, that I was well aware of the lengths he would go to. He would find countless ways to force me to comply. If it came to a lawsuit I couldn't possibly win against his company's lawyers. That's exactly what he had said. In my past life later, I was set up and photographed in compromising situations with male models with damning evidence that branded me an adulteress. Overnight, I became a public disgrace, shamed by the world, while he and Lila played the role of innocent victims. I'll sign, I said after a long pause. But you have to agree to one condition. Ethan gave me a quick glance and nodded. He handed me the pen, and I took it, my expression utterly calm as I signed my name on the divorce papers. You're not going to read the agreement first? Ethan frowned at me. I smiled faintly. No need. The terms were practically a clean break. He was giving up all the assets to me, leaving with nothing. All of this just to protect Lila and repay her family's kindness. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow, I said. Okay, he replied. For a moment, his hand holding the divorce papers hesitated. His eyes held a hint of confusion, but he ultimately said nothing. As they left, Lila turned to glance back at me with a mocking smirk. Her lips moved silently, but I could clearly make out her words. You've lost. I had indeed lost everything in my life, but now I didn't want to lose again. Half an hour later, my phone screen lit up with a message from Ethan. Autumn, I'm sorry you had to endure this today. Once this situation blows over, I'll give you a grand wedding banquet, and will remarry. I couldn't just stand by and watch Lila's depression. Son, you understand me, don't you? I read his words and couldn't hold back a laugh, though tears well up in my eyes. It was just like the laugh life Ethan had gotten drunk with his friends trying to come up with a plan to force me into divorce. What he forgot was that his friends were also my friends. Point one of them, Jason, had tried persuading me to understand Ethan, saying he was a man of deep loyalty and gratitude. He explained how Lila's father had recognized Ethan's abilities, invested in him, and helped him start his business. Without Lila's family, Ethan wouldn't have achieved his success. I had cried as I retorted Ethan could have clarified the situation in countless ways. Why did it have to be divorce? Jason had fallen silent, admitting that he had asked Ethan the same question. Ethan's answer had been, someone has to be wrong. Autumn will understand, because she loves me. How absurd. As I loved him, I had to sacrifice myself. Thankfully, I still had a chance now. When it came to Lila, Ethan always acted quickly. That very after After signing the divorce papers, he arranged a press conference for the evening. He even sent his assistant to invite me to attend and clarify the situation before I could respond. The assistant as, assuming I would refuse, relate Ethan's words to me. Miss Autumn, you should attend this press conference even if it's not for Mr. Ethan, it's for your reputation. Paused for a moment, then let out a bitter laugh. Ethan was threatening me, trying to use the same tactics as in my previous life to force me into submission. He wanted to throw dirt on me and make me struggle under the weight of public opinion until I had no choice but to bow my head. I had never understood. Did Ethan see me as his wife for his enemy this time? He wanted to publicly clarify our relationship, and I was no exception. The press conference was held in the grand ballroom of the most luxurious hotel in the city. The invited journalists were all influential figures in the industry. When Lila appeared arm in arm with Ethan dressed in an elegant ching, Sam the reporter swarmed around them instantly. A hand instinctively shielded at her, smiling as he gently blocked the microphone aimed at her. Please give us some space. I'll answer your questions one by one shortly, he said, his voice calm and polite. As he looked up, his gaze met mine amidst the crowd of reporters. For a fleeting moment I foolishly hoped he might step in and to shield me too, but the next second he looked away, his expression unchanged, his smile unwavering. He led Lee onto the stage, as if he hadn't seen me at all. I scoffed, curling my lips into a bitter smile. A young reporter, likely an intern, nervously handed me a microphone and asked, Miss Autumn, is it true that you've divorced Mr. Ethan? Yes, I smiled, nodding calmly. The intern pushed his glasses up, pressing further. But you and Mr. Ethan were high school sweethearts, dated for 7 years, and were married for 5 just last month. He even spent a fortune buying an island and naming it after you. How could you divorce so suddenly? I maintained my smile, though it no longer reached my eyes. That island was something he owed me, I replied to care for Leah. During her illness, Ethan had missed my birthday and failed to prepare my gift. I end my past life. I've been foolishly overjoyed by the island, only to later learn it was Jason's idea. Ethan hadn't even known where the island was located. The intern hesitated before asking timidly, do you still love Mr. Ethan? Silence fell around us. Every reporter nearby stopped talking, waiting for my answer. Even Ethan, standing on the stage, turned his gaze toward me, his brow furrowing slightly. I met his eyes briefly before turning back to the intern and answered without hesitation, no. The interview didn't last much longer. After Ethan publicly clarified that our marriage had been effectively over for a year, he left the venue overnight. I became the discarded youth goods in the eyes of the public. Meanwhile, Lila was hailed as the innocent victim of the entire scandal. The interview from that day remained pinned at the top of social media platforms for several days, and the topic continued to trend. Ethan's words during the press conference fueled the fire. Autumn and I had already planned to divorce a year ago. We were trying to handle it quietly, but now that innocent people have been implicated, we had no choice but to clarify publicly. Lila is not a third party in our relationship. She is the only person my mentor care about in this world, and it's natural for me to take care of her. I hope everyone can view this matter rationally. Fans were quick to twist the narrative, claiming that the reason for the breakdown of my marriage with Ethan was my inability to tolerate even the slightest flaw. They painted their so-called pure sibling bond as something noble, while portrayed me as petty and lacking grace. They said I hadn't learned even a shred of Ethan's loyalty and gratitude after 5 years of marriage. The topic continued to ferment for days, leaving me as the villain of the story. After finalizing the divorce certificate, as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Ethan stopped me. Don't take what people are saying online to heart. It won't be long before they forget all about it. I paused, unable to hold back a faint laugh. Funny, isn't it? We're both being attacked, line, yet the difference in treatment is so stark. Ethan didn't respond, but his expression tightened. Autumn, in 2 months, it'll be New Year's. Once the year begins, let's remarry, okay? His step closer, his gaze intent, but I took a step back, keeping my tone calm as I glanced toward the reporters being held back by security nearby. Ethan seemed to realize his mistake and stopped in his tracks. I'm going back to Harbor City, I said. It's been a while since you've been back. Maybe it's a good idea, he replied. When New Year's comes, I'll pick you up and bring you home. I interrupted him before he could finish. Ethan, when I agreed to sign the divorce papers, you promised me one thing. It's time you kept your word. Ian's smile froze on his face, his eyes clouded with confusion. I want you to never appear in front of me again, I said it with a smile, and as I turned to leave, disappearing into the crowd, E.T. stood frozen, unable to process my words. For a brief moment I saw panic flash across his face of fear, as if he were about to lose something most precious to him. It was the same unease he had felt when I calmly signed the divorce papers without a fight back then. He had anticipated me to scream, cry, and cause a scene just as I had in the past. He had even prepared for it, rehearsing ways to handle my outburst. But I picked up the pen with an expression as calm, still water, signed my name, and walked away. That moment he had felt the fleeting urge to stop me, but in the end he did nothing, telling himself it didn't matter. Autumn loved him deeply after all this was just a fake divorce. He could always make it up to me later, but Lila was different. He couldn't allow her to get hurt in any way. Years ago, it was Lila's father who had seen potential in him and risked alienating other shareholders to invest in Ethan's project. It was that decision that had elevated Ethan to his current status as one of the rising elites in the city. Before Lila's father passed away, he made Ethan promised to take care of Lila and ensure her well-being. Ethan couldn't bear to betray that trust. Jason once asked Ethan, if one day both Lila and Autumn were to fall off a cliff, who would you save? Ethan had laughed then, dismissing the question as absurd. I would save Lila, of course, but I would also die with Autumn. Jason had laughed along, but he added, and what if Autumn doesn't want to die? Ethan, you can't take advantage of her love for you to keep hurting her like this. For she ever stops feeling your love, she will lose hope too. Even Han hadn't taken those words seriously at the time, brushing them off without a second thought. He didn't realize how prophetic they would become. That night, Ethan returned to the villa after marrying Ethan. I had always lived in the villa halfway up the hill. I was an exceptional artist, celebrated as a prodigy from the age of 10, when my surreal landscape painting captivated audiences and earned me the title of a young genius in traditional Chinese painting. Everyone believed I had an extraordinary talent in this art form and would eventually become a leading figure in this field, and I did. But after our marriage, my own artistic style changed drastically. My works no longer held the same allure they once did. My mentor tried tirelessly to guide me, but it didn't help much. Eventually, I gave up painting altogether, even rejecting the idea of picking up a brush. Ethan stepped into my art studio and froze when his eyes landed on the landscape painting on the easel. With just a few strokes, the scene came to life, vivid and mesmerizing. Seeing the light on in the studio, Ms. Chun came in, startled to find Ethan there. Sir, she said hesitantly, this painting, it's something Madam worked on. Ethan looked up. When did she paint this? It was the day you brought Miss Lila home, Mrs. Chen, replied he, and nodded slightly. He tried to smile, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't. Leaving the studio, he returned to the bedroom he had shared with me. He had told himself countless times that this was just a temporary divorce. Once the storm settled, he would propose to me again, give me the grand wedding I deserved, and make everything right. But somehow his heart always felt empty. The words I said earlier that day, he brushed them off as things I had uttered in anger. In his mind, there was no way I wouldn't return to the home we had built together. The knock on the master bedroom door broke the silence. Sitting at the edge of the bed, Kia-sun looked up to see Lila standing at the door. She was wearing a then dress, her cheeks faintly flushed, gazing at him quietly. Why are you here? He asked. Leah bit her lip before answering softly, I was scared being alone at the hotel, so I came to find you. Am I bothering you? Ethan frowned slightly, but still said, it's fine, it's late, I'll ask Ms. Chun to prepare a guest room for you. Stay here tonight. As he reached for his phone to call Ms. Chun, Leah stepped into the room, her delicate eyes filled with watery tenderness. Looked up at him. Ethan, she said softly, I don't want to stay in the guest room. Is that okay? His frown deepened, his lips parting as if to refuse, but when he saw her red and eyes, he hesitated. Eventually his resolve faltered. By the time the plane landed in Harbor City, it was Mason who came to pick me up years ago when he was 18. Mason had saved a girl only to be falsely accused of assault. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison with a criminal record. No company was willing to hire him. I first met him at an art exhibition. He never spoke to anyone, always keeping his head lower whenever someone approached. He would timidly shrink back. One night, I was on my way home. I encountered a group of thugs and nearly fell victim to an attack. Mason happened to pass by. I thought he would turn a blind eye, but he didn't. Without A moment's hesitation, he stepped in to save me later. I asked him what if I had turned on you just like the others. He gave me a bitter smile and said then so be it. Using my family's influence, I cleared his name and brought the truth to light. The day his innocence was proven, he stood in the distance, looking at me through dry eyes, bowing deeply in gratitude. 3 years in prison hadn't erased his kindness. After my father saved Mason and extended a hand to help him, he arranged for Mason to join our company starting from the bottom. Now Mason is my father's most reliable assistant. It's been a long time, Mississippi, Mason said, dressed in a trench coat as he casually took my suitcase. I nodded, my nose stinging with an inexplicable sadness. 5 years ago, when I married Ethan and followed him north, Mason had been sent by my father to country for an intensive training program. In my previous life, I never saw Mason again before my death. Mr. Sippy, are you planning to leave again after this visit? Mason asked. I shook my head. No, I'm staying. He smiled faintly. Mr. Chu was very happy to hear you've come back, Mr. Sippy. Hearing that name, my hand clenched in my pocket, bitterness washing over me. Back then, when news of my divorce with Ethan had spread far and wide, my father, worried that I would suffer, flew overnight from Harbor City to the capital. He tried to persuade me earnestly. Even Han always does things that are unclear and indecisive. Back then he was willing to work with that old man from Leela's family, but refused your help if he didn't want to rely on you. Fine, but wasn't he still relying on their investment? Autumn, just let the divorce happen. Ethan isn't right for you. He wanted to take me back to Harbor City, but I refused. I cried, fought, and begged to stay. Through tears, I told him I love Ethan, don't want a divorce. Why should I sacrifice myself to fulfill his sense of gratitude? Even if it kills me, I won't leave him. In the end, I didn't go. My father was so enraged that he suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the ICU. We received multiple critical notices overnight, and my mother's hair turned white in a single night. When my father finally woke up, he didn't say a word to me, but I knew he was deeply disappointed. Even on her DSB, my mother tried to reason with me. Your father has never interfered with any of your decisions, but Ethan is not a good match for you. But I wouldn't listen. I stubbornly pursued what I wanted, crashing into a wall repeatedly until it costs me my life. Only then did I realize that I wasn't as important to Ethan as I had thought. Are they doing well? I asked Mason. He nodded. Company is thriving and both Mr. and Mrs. Chu are in good health. I smiled faintly, meeting his calm gaze. Thank you, Mason. Thank you for taking care of my parents in my place. He shook his head. It was my duty. If it hadn't been for you and Mr. Chu helping me back then, I would have died in some dark corner a long time ago. The trending topics on social media continued to spiral. What began as accusations of Lila being Ethan's mistress had now morphed into claims that I was heartless and unfaithful. Yesterday, paparazzi had photographed Mason and me at the airport, fueling rumors that I had been cheating on Ethan, which was the real reason for our marriage breaking down. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. When I lowered my gaze to my phone, I saw a message from Leela's private account. She had sent me a photo of herself from last night staying at the villa. It was accompanied by a message. Ethan invited me to stay overnight. What do you think he'll do tonight? Ethan is a responsible man, but now the shackles are gone. Autumn, your husband is mine now. She was clearly trying to provoke me, but my heart was already numb to such things. Mason handed me a cup of tea, glancing worriedly at my phone screen before saying calmly, Mississippi, I'll make sure you get justice for all the wrongs you've endured. I didn't respond to his words. Instead, I asked, I heard my father introduced you to several socialites and encouraged you to start a family. Why did you refuse? Mason froze, caught off guard by my question. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the teacup, remaining silent for a long time. Pressed on, is it because of me? His gaze flickered nervously as he met mine for a fleeting moment before looking away again. Although the past 5 years, although we hadn't seen each other, Mason had never failed to send me extravagant birthday gifts. He would even transfer large sums of money to my account from time to time, practically giving me everything he earned. I had refused his gestures countless times, but he remained persistent. One day I called him in for the first time, lost my temper with him. I told Mason, you saved my life once, and I helped you once. That makes us even. My father brought you into the company, and everything you've achieved today is because of your own efforts. You don't know me anything, and not your creditor. What you're doing only damages my marriage, making Ethan misunderstand our relationship. After That conversation, Mason stopped transferring money to me. His gifts became more measured. And no longer extravagant. Mason, I've told you before, you don't owe me anything, I said. Again he bit his lip, as if hesitating, then replied, that's not why. He looked at me, his lips curing into a faint smile, his eyes beaming with sincerity. I love you, Miss Autumn. I know there's a world of difference between us. Like mud and clouds, I've never dared to hope you'd look back at me, but my heart belongs to you. I don't want to deceive myself, nor do I want to hold anyone else back. As Mason's words trailed off, I raised my gaze to quietly study him. We were the same age, yet he had matured. Far earlier than me. When I first met him, he had been timid and out of place. Now, he was a pillar of the company and my father's most trusted company. Last night, after returning to the old house, my father spoke with me for a long time. He talked about the company's future, my future. Then he asked me two questions. The first was, Oh, you still love Edson? I shook my head and answered no without hesitation. But when he asked the second question, I fell silent. Would you consider marrying Mom? My father had been planning his retirement. Although Mason had been by his side for years, he wasn't a member of our family. I had been unsure at first, but now I knew the answer. Mason, will you marry me? 2 days later in the capital, Ethan sat in the art studio, his head bowed as he replayed the clip of my interview with the intern. Do you still love Mr. Ethan? The intern had asked. I had smiled and answered no. 3 simple words, yet they left him feeling inexplicably stifled. He had replayed that moment countless times, as if trying to glean something from my expression, but he found nothing. Frustrated, he exited our chat window, but as he opened it, he realized our last exchange was from the day I reminded him to meet me at 9 a.m. at the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize our divorce certificate. He had simply replied okay, and that was it. In the past, I had loved clinging to him, sharing every little detail of my life. He would always respond promptly, but scrolling back through our chat history, he noticed how over time it became mostly one-sided. I had been talking to myself, and his occasional replies were nothing more than okay or got it. He had been too busy with work at the company. After Lila's father passed away, her depression had worsened and she had attempted suicide multiple times. He had been consumed by trying to manage everything and hadn't been able to focus on me. Suddenly Jason sent him a message. Autumn is marrying Mason. Ethan shot to his feet and shock, accidentally knocking over a nearby easel. The landscape painting on it fluttered to the floor as he bent down to pick it up. A medical report slipped out from underneath the painting. He froze for 2 seconds. When he finished reading the report, his fingertips trembled slightly. The patient exhibits severe emotional instability with recurring suicidal thoughts. Severe sleep disturbances were noted. The patient displayed signs of moderate depression. The date at the bottom of the diagnosis: the day Ethan proposed divorce to me. Ethan. What's going on? Lila, hearing the commotion, rushed into the studio from the master bedroom. When she saw the diagnosis report in Ethan's hands, a calculating glint flashed in her eyes. May I take a look at that? She asked softly. Ethan said nothing, but his chest tightened painfully. Leah took the report from him without resistance, flipping through a few pages. Before feigning relief, she patted his shoulder lightly and said, don't worry, Ethan, remember, and also a depression patient. You've seen how bad it can get during my episodes, but that day I saw Autumn. She looked perfectly healthy, not at all like someone suffering from an illness. Maybe she was just too upset and fabricated this report to get your attention. Lila was about to continue, but Ethan, suppressing his emotion, took the report back from her hands. He walked a few steps away, his mind racing, before abruptly turning to her. Starting tomorrow, don't stay in the master bedroom any, he said flatly. If Autumn finds out, it'll cause unnecessary trouble. Lila froze in place, stunned by the time she snapped out of it, and tried to follow him, calling Ethan. He had already gone downstairs, hurriedly leaving without even taking his coat. That moment, Ethan didn't care whether the report was real or not, or whether I was truly marrying Mason. The only thought in his mind was to find me and bring me back home. Mason, on the other hand, had been meticulously involved in every detail of our wedding preparations. During the date, he managed company affairs and supervised the wedding arrangements. At night, he sat in the living room, carefully writing out invitations by hand. Autumn, you don't need to handle all these things yourself. Let your assistant take care of it. You're already working so hard. There's no need to exhaust yourself further. I stood at the top of the stairs, holding a cup of tea, looking down at him in the living room. He sat down his pen and gave me a warm smile. No matter what it is, I want to give you the best, Autumn. I know I may not hold a place in your heart, but you've always been at the center of mine. For a moment as our gazes met, I felt a flicker of emotion stir within me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Mason, you don't need to feel burdened by this, just focus on being a beautiful bride, he added with a soft laugh, his eyes so calm no longer hit the depth of his feelings. I smiled faintly and nodded, but I hadn't expected Ethan to show up in Harbor City. Mason and I had just stepped out of the fitting room after trying on our wedding attire when I saw Ethan standing under a camper tree across the street. He wore a simple white shirt, his hair slightly disheveled, his face pale and devoid of its usual vitality. His gaze lingered on my hand clasped with Mason's before he looked away and forced a weak smile and said, Autumn, I've come to take you home. We don't have to wait until next year. Let's remarry now, okay? As he took a few steps toward us, Mason instinctively moved to stand in front of me, but I stopped him with a gentle touch, adjusting his slightly crooked tie. I said softly, go wait in the car for me. I'll join you shortly. Mom's made your favorite dish tonight. We'll head home together later. Mason lowered his eyes to meet mine, his lips curving into a faint smile. All right. He cast a calm glance at Ethan before turning and walking toward the car. Now it was just Ethan and me by the roadside. He instinctively tried to come closer, but I subtly stepped back, keeping my tone gentle. Mr. Ethan, let's maintain some distance between us. Otherwise, if the paparazzi catch us, social media will be full of stories about how I'm clinging to my ex-husband again. No matter the time or place, I couldn't afford another scandal. People are always exceptionally harsh on women. The situation with Lila was a prime example. From the beginning to the end, it was Ethan who failed to handle things properly, yet in the end, I was the one accused of being petty and lacking grace. Autumn, Ethan's eyes dimmed as a bitter smile tugged at his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. I've asked my assistant to handle the situation on the platform. I'm sorry you had to endure this. I didn't realize how much trouble it caused you. Didn't realize. I looked at him and replied calmly, Ethan, if you didn't know how much public opinion could hurt someone, you wouldn't have chosen to divorce me just to protect Lila. In my previous life, after being falsely accused of cheating with multiple male models, I was publicly shamed and divorced by Ethan. My career plummeted, and I became the laughingstock of everyone. Some even mock me to my face. Thing, Autumn, after everything your ex-husband put you through, how do you even have the audacity to keep living? Fire were you, I'd have jumped off an 18-story building by now. I couldn't sleep at night. I'd sit by the floor-to-ceiling windows staring at the city lights. I burned down my studio and destroyed everything Ethan had ever given me, as if that could somehow erase him from my heart. I invented all my frustration, hating how the boy who once loved me with all his heart had pushed me to the brink. In the end, I split my wrist. To this day, I can still remember the feeling of my life slipping away drop by drop. Ethan opened his mouth to explain, but no words came out. Eventually, he could only bow his head weakly. Autumn, I'll make it up to you, he said softly. I couldn't hold back a laugh. I've heard that too many times. After Lila's father passed away, Ethan left our engagement dinner halfway through. Thing, Lila's having a problem. I need to check on her. On our wedding day, Lila attempted suicide after dropping me off at our bridal suite. Ethan stayed with her all night. I wavered, then questioning if I should continue this relationship, but seeing how exhausted he looked, I swallowed my doubts. I left decent, so I was willing to endure all the hardships alongside him. Every broken promise was met with the same response. Autumn, I'll make it up to you. Even Han always thought we had a lifetime together, but he forgot that love can be worn down by the end of my previous life. I couldn't tell if I still loved him or if it was just an obsession. I scoffed and said, Ethan, I've asked for so little, but even that's too much for you and my parents' beloved daughter too. Why should I let you trample all over me? Let's just end this. As I finished speaking, I turned to leave. Ethan, panicking, grabbed my arm. His unsteady body nearly stumbled and his pale lips trembled as he spoke. I won't agree to this. I can't just let it go. Autumn, you're my wife. You can't leave me. His voice quivered. I pulled my arm free and laughed softly. Ethan, we're already divorced. You forced me to sign the divorce papers, pressured me to attend the press conference to clarify things, and even a nerd, I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize it. You can't deny that, can you? Ethan froze as I began to walk away again. I tilted my head slightly toward him. Ethan, you and Lila actually make a great pair. His face turned ashen. Instantly, he had arrived in Harbor City in the middle of the night after his assistant tracked down my itinerary. He hadn't rested for a moment before rushing to find me, but when he saw me wearing a wedding dress and laughing with Mason, he stopped in his tracks. Standing under the camphor tree, he watched in silence. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen me smile, so genuinely whenever we were together it always ended in arguments about Lila. Gradually, he stopped coming home, either staying at the office or drinking through the night with his friends. That moment, he understood with absolute clarity that what I had said at the Civil Affairs Bureau that day was heartfelt. I didn't want him anymore, but he couldn't live with me inside the bridal boutique. Mason and I continued our preparations unaware of the man standing outside, watching quietly. How long had he stood there? Even Ethan didn't know. All he felt was the sharp pain of realizing he might have lost me forever. He stood outside for who knows how long. At one point, he even considered barging in and punching Mason, warning him to stay away from his wife, but in the end, he couldn't take that step. He was afraid of how Lila might view him. Ethan, Autumn left a Lila ago, Lila murmured, tugging on Ethan's sleeve and pulling him out of his daze. He lowered his eyes to look at her, his voice cold and slightly hoarse. Why are you here? I heard Autumn is marrying someone else. I was worried you'd be upset, so I came to check on you, she said softly. Just as she reached out to hug him, Ethan frowned and pressed a hand firmly on her shoulder to stop her. For a moment, his eyes glistened, and Liwa's voice became shaky. Ethan, Autumn doesn't want you anymore, but I do. Let's get married, okay? Ethan had never denied her anything before. She had always assumed that after Autumn divorced him, she would naturally take the position of Mrs. Ethan, but now Ethan's expression turned ice. Why, Lila, do you even know what you're saying? I do, Ethan, I love you, she said, confessing her feelings for the first time. Jason let out a pale, bitter smile, but the more he smiled, but closer he came to tears. Jason had warned him countless times. Lila's feelings for you aren't right, Ethan. You can't keep her in check. She'll ruin your marriage. You should send her away before it's too late. But Hen never believed him. Now he realized how blind he had been. Harbor City was far from the capital, but once something hit social media, it didn't take long for it to spiral. On the third day of Ethan's attempts to reconcile with me, Mason sent him proof that Lila had falsified my medical report. Mason also compiled evidence of how Ethan had repeatedly prioritized Lila over me, even at the expense of his career. The evidence was released online, forming a damning narrative. Overnight, public opinion became sharply divided, but it no longer concerned me. Some accused Lila of repaying kindness, with betrayal ruining my marriage and causing its collapse. Others criticized Ethan for his hypocrisy, questioning why he couldn't repay Lila's father's kindness with money or resources, instead of tormenting his wife to the point of despair and divorce. Ethan's reputation plummeted and his company's stock wavered. Not long after I uncovered evidence that Lila had staged photos of her and Ethan entering a hotel together. She had even hired online trolls to insult herself as a mistress to evoke sympathy. Mason released this evidence as well, turning social media into a chaotic battleground. Ethan, overwhelmed, reached his breaking point. He planned to send Rewrote, but after seeing the trending topic, he nearly strangled her to death on the side of the road. Why did you do it? He demanded furiously. First, Lila tried to play the emotional card, but when his grip tightened and she could barely breathe, she suddenly burst into hysterical laughter and admitted, yes, I wanted to be Mru's Ethan. I wanted it. Autumn out of the picture. Ethan, she truly loved her. I wouldn't have had a chance to interfere. E.T., consumed by rage, vomited blood on the spot and collapsed. A bystander captured the scene on video and it quickly went viral online. Ethan's company stock plummeted further, and he was removed from his position as CEO. As for Lila, her reputation was utterly destroyed, leaving her no choice but to leave the country. But fate was unkind. On her way to the airport, she was involved in a fatal car accident. On my wedding day, Mason gave me a grand ceremony with flowers filling the city and fireworks leading up the night. It became the talk of everyone when a guest jokingly remarked that marrying Mason must have been the result of good karma in my past life. Mason let out a cold laugh and immediately had them escorted out of the venue. During his wedding vows, Mason spoke openly. I am nothing more than the two families live and son-in-law. In this life, I belong to the two family. In life and in death, I'll be a ghost of the two family, though my heart might not have entirely belonged To Mason, his unwavering devotion to me never wavered on our wedding night. He held me tightly as if afraid I might leave or vanish. It wasn't until I pressed him for answers that I learned Ethan had taken his own life. Before his death, he regained clarity for a brief moment. He sent Mason the medical report I had left behind in the studio, along with a letter addressed to me. The letter was long, every word greed and guilt. He described a nightmare he had in the dream. He forced me to divorce him, and when I refused to compromise, he schemed against me and set me up, sending me to the beds of several men. In the end, I was so desperate that I slit my wrists and ended my life. He wrote that the Ethan in the dream didn't intend to drive me to such despair. He only wanted me to bow my head, and given he never imagined it would result in my death. Most of all, he confessed that he didn't know my illness was real. He swore that if he had known, he would never ever have treated me that way. He wrote about how in the dream, when he saw the blood covering the bathroom floor, his heart shattered. He wished he could have been the one to die. Instead, the letter ended with 2 sentences. Thankfully, the events in the dream didn't happen. I'm sorry. I let out a cold laugh as I read it. In the end, I casually tossed the letter into the trash, along with the medical report. Miss and frowned slightly. Lee, Mississippi, he murmured. I responded softly. The old Autumn was sick, but I'm not that person anymore. Leaving him cured me. After a long pause, Mason's frown gave way to a resigned but affectionate smile. I looked at him and smiled back. Thankfully, in this life, I lost nothing.